Our next guest has a popular blog called 5 Kids, 1 Condo. And he is a strong advocate for urban living. Please welcome Adrian Crook.
Obviously, I am passionate about cities and raising kids in them. You have to be to live with 5 kids in a 1,000 square foot condo a few blocks from here. And I'm here tonight to talk about some of the reasons I'm passionate about that, but also some of the ways we can maybe make the city better for kids. And we've only got 7 minutes, so I'm gonna jump right through this. When I practiced this with my daughters, it was quite a bit longer, so. One of the reasons I love living in Vancouver and in cities in general and raising kids in cities is diversity. What you see here is a time we took some socks down to the downtown east side and gave them out to downtown east side residents. And it was fantastic, the conversations that started around bedtime. You know, why do they need socks? How do they get to be homeless? You know, homeless people are not a prop. I don't want to use them that way. But in this case, this constant exposure to the diversity of cities is fantastic for children. The heterogeneous nature of our city is what gives it its color and is representative of humanity. And independent mobility is another fantastic thing to teach young kids. We get around by bus, we get around by bicycle train, as you can see there. That's on the way to summer camp. I taught my kids, I spent 2 years teaching my kids how to take the bus, actually, and it's a fantastic gift of confidence for children. And then simplicity, really living in the city sort of pares everything back. This is my daughter, my youngest daughter, cleaning under the table with a vacuum cleaner. We can take our whole place to completely clean in about 30 minutes, and that leaves a whole lot of time for us to focus on important things, relationships with each other. And moving on a little bit, the things that I think could be improved from a family and city perspective in Vancouver. You can probably recognize this. This is Robson Square in the 8 months of the year that it's not used as an ice rink, the ice rink portion of Robson Square. And this, to my kids, is like a cardboard box to a cat. It's an awesome, unprogrammed space. It's a wild space. It's not really wild, but to them, it's a blank slate. And there are a few places like this in this city. And that's kind of the problem. There are a few places. When you go to the suburbs or maybe further out, there might be that empty lot, and you can find junk on it, and you can play forever in that. I mean, that's what kids like. And in this city and other cities, we don't necessarily have many of those unprogrammed spaces. One of the comments I get the most on the blog is, just wait until they're teenagers. People are desperate to tell me that this is not going to work when they're teenagers. And they may be right. In the last couple of months, I'm beginning to think they are. But those are teenagers for you. But third places, the importance of third places, the places that aren't school and they aren't work in an adult case, they're libraries, community centers, parks, places that kids can get out to for free or for low cost. Options to entertain themselves are so important when you just need to get away from your siblings and the 4 walls are only so big. And that's something we could really do a lot more of in the city because it is so expensive to live in the city. Getting those kind of free options is that social equity piece, that sort of escape valve from our 4 walls if you're going to ask people to live in such a small space. And another issue we have is, Vancouver is consistently talked about as being a lonely city. There are numerous sort of studies that come out that tell us we're lonely. I've taken out an ad in our building's lobby on more than one occasion saying playdates wanted. So it's hard to make those connections, and pets are those things that often are the surrogates for those connections. And this, for any renters, I'm a renter, for any renters in the room, this is a tough thing to find a place that allows pets. And these pets, we're not allowed to have pets in our building, so these are fictional rats. We'll just keep this a secret to this room. But they're necessary, vital parts of our family fabric. And if we're going to make a go of it as families in a city, we need to do a better job of allowing pet-friendly rentals. And a lot of people talk about sharing economy, and I'm not, when they talk about Airbnb and Uber, and yeah, I have my own thoughts about that. But the real sharing economy is things that we share for free. We share because it's mutually beneficial. And this is a Vancouver-based service called Part-Time Pooch. And this is Friday the Basset Hound, and it's a very reciprocal sort of arrangement we have where we take Friday out and he benefits and his owner benefits and we benefit, but we have none of the downstream costs of dog ownership, which is fantastic. And these kind of services, and you see them also like in tool shed sort of arrangements, make it possible for families living in small places to get by without having to acquire like a radial arm saw or something silly like that that you're only going to use once. And Friday's been a fantastic pal for us. And getting towards the end here, last but not least, it takes a village to raise a child. And right now we build, we don't really build villages here in Vancouver. We build silos, we build like towers where individual floors are fobbed off. You can't get to your neighbor necessarily. Or we build detached houses, and they're $3 to $5 million. That's not really family entry priced. And this is actually a fantastic example, and it's unfortunately the only example in Vancouver. This is Vancouver co-housing on 33rd between Knight and Victoria, I guess. My friend Rachel lives in this building. It was 3 city lots, and it was combined. Those three lots were combined. It now houses 75 people in about 31 units. It's got fantastic amenities. I can barely read them here, but if I remember correctly, it's like lounge, teen room, bike room, communal kitchen. It's the way we should be living if we're going to sustain ourselves and sustain our social relationships. And this is, ironically, the hardest thing for us to build in the city right now, and it should be the easiest thing. Things like purpose-built rental, social housing, co-housing, seniors housing, these are, for some reason, the hardest thing for us to build. We either build towers, like I said, or detached houses. And if we want families to stay in this city, we need to build more of these, and we need to make this the simplest thing for us to build. When I posted images of this on my Instagram, it was the most comments I ever had. I posted stories, and people were like, how can I live there? They were desperate to live there. And that's telling. I mean, the city is crying out for this type of solution to, not just families, but singles and seniors and everyone I mentioned. So this is hugely important in our future. So, in quick summary, I'm very close to out of time. Vancouver still has its flaws, but there is a lot to say yes to in Vancouver. There are a lot of really positive things, and it's unfortunately a luxury, it seems like these days, to raise kids, 5 of them in my case, in downtown Vancouver. But there are things we can do to make it less so of a luxury and more of a right. And I hope to make that happen and help to make that happen. Thanks a lot for your time tonight.